The rain fell steadily that afternoon, drumming against the windows like a soft warning. Ariba sat on the sofa, curled in a blanket, watching the water streak down the glass. There was something in the air that made her uneasy, a heaviness she couldn't name. It was the kind of day where everything seems ordinary, yet nothing feels normal. She could hear the faint sound of traffic outside, but inside the house felt unusually quiet. Her younger brother, Hamza, was focused on his homework. At the dining table, pencils scratching on paper, oblivious to the tension gathering like clouds in their home. Their mother, Samina, moved quietly in the kitchen, humming softly while arranging the teacups, her movements smooth but precise. Almost as if she was trying to keep herself busy so she wouldn't notice the change in the atmosphere. It was rare for their father, Rashid Khan, to come home early. He had a strict routine, office by 9, meetings and calls all day, and home by 6, sometimes even later. But today, the clock hadn't yet reached 5 when they heard the familiar sound of the front gate creaking. Ariba looked up instinctively, her heart skipping a beat. She didn't know why, but she had the sudden sensation that something unusual was about to happen. Her father's footsteps were heavy and hesitant, different from the confident, steady rhythm she was used to. When he stepped into the living room, she noticed immediately that his hair was damp from the rain, and his coat was clutched tightly to his chest as though it was shielding him from more than just the weather. Rashid's face was pale, almost as if the rain had washed some color away. His eyes, usually sharp and full of energy, seemed distant, focused somewhere far beyond the walls of their home. He didn't greet anyone at first. He simply set his coat on the hanger, brushing off the drops mechanically, and sank into the armchair as if he had carried not just his briefcase and umbrella, but a heavy burden. Samina, ever observant, noticed his unusual demeanor immediately. She placed the tea tray on the table with deliberate calm, trying to mask the flicker of worry in her eyes. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was soft but firm. "You're home early today. Everything okay?" Rashid didn't answer right away. He opened his mouth, closed it again, then finally muttered something almost unintelligible, barely above a whisper. The air in the room thickened, tense and uncertain, like the moment just before lightning strikes. Ariba's curiosity had already gotten the better of her. She watched her father, sensing that something had changed inside him. Something that had been quietly brewing for a long time, but had now surfaced unexpectedly. There was a stiffness in his shoulders that hadn't been there before, a rigidity. That suggested he was holding back words that might alter everything. She had seen him stressed before, worried about work or family matters, but this was different. This was personal. There was an unfamiliar weight in his gaze that unsettled her, a kind of anxiety she had never seen in him before. Then came the knock. 3 soft, deliberate taps echoed through the hallway. It was not loud, not urgent, but there was a strange rhythm to it that made everyone in the room freeze. Rashid's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. He stiffened, his hands gripping the armrest of the chair as if the very sound had pierced him. His eyes widened, and for a moment Ariba thought she saw the color drain from his face. There was no fear, exactly, but there was recognition, and recognition carries a weight all its own. Rashid rose too quickly, as if propelled by a mix of dread and inevitability. "I'll get it," he said, his voice sharper than usual, but with a hint of hesitation that betrayed his inner turmoil. Before anyone could react further, Ariba had already moved toward the door. She had always been a curious child, and today that curiosity was sharpened by the tension in the house. She opened the door slowly, as if expecting something unimaginable. Standing there was a woman under a black umbrella, the rain dripping from its edges onto the welcome mat. She looked to be in her early 40s, dressed neatly but with an air of quiet wariness. Her eyes were calm yet heavy, carrying a story that had been long untold. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She simply asked with gentle clarity, "Is Mr. Rashid home?" Ariba's heart skipped another beat. There was something in the woman's tone, in the way she held herself, that suggested she knew her father intimately, or at least enough to expect recognition. Rashid appeared behind her, and Ariba caught the subtle exchange of glances between them. His eyes softened, then tightened, and finally, just for a moment, he seemed almost vulnerable. There was a pause that stretched long enough for Ariba to feel the weight of unspoken history. Her father's usually composed and calm demeanor cracked ever so slightly. He looked at the woman with a mixture of surprise, concern, and perhaps even regret. Samina stepped forward cautiously, her expression polite but guarded. She gestured toward the living room. "Please come in," she said, her voice steady despite the flutter of uncertainty in her chest. The woman nodded, lowering her umbrella carefully, revealing neatly combed hair that had hints of silver at the temples. She moved inside without a word, placing the umbrella in the corner and shaking off the rain. The faint smell of fresh rain and soil clung to her coat. Every movement she made was deliberate, as if she was trying not to disturb the fragile balance of the room. Ariba followed silently, observing her father's reaction. Rashid's usual confidence seemed gone, replaced with a cautious alertness, a kind of tension that Ariba had never witnessed. He offered her a seat on the sofa, and she took it without a word, trying to make sense of the sudden shift in her household. The room was filled with the soft patter of rain outside, creating a quiet backdrop to a scene that felt like the calm before a storm. The energy in the room was thick with anticipation, each person acutely aware of the other's presence. Yet hesitant to speak, the woman finally introduced herself. "My name is Layla," she said softly, her eyes meeting Rashid's with an intensity that suggested they shared memories long buried. Rashid nodded subtly, and Ariba could see the flicker of emotion in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps a trace of guilt, and certainly recognition. Layla's presence was like a key turning in a lock that had remained untouched for years. She did not rush into conversation. She did not accuse or demand. She simply sat, letting the silence linger, allowing the room to absorb the tension that had suddenly taken hold. Samina observed all of this quietly. She was an intelligent woman, and her instincts told her this visit was not trivial. She noticed the slight tremble in her husband's hands, the way his shoulders seemed to slump as he fought to maintain composure. She understood immediately that this was not about something superficial. Something from the past had returned, something personal, something that required acknowledgement. Her mind raced, yet her voice remained calm. She offered tea, her hands steady as she poured hot water over the leaves, releasing the fragrant aroma into the room. It was a small domestic gesture, but one that seemed to ground the moment, providing a measure of normalcy in the midst of uncertainty. Ariba, sitting quietly on the sofa, felt a mix of curiosity, apprehension, and an unspoken understanding that she was witnessing a moment that could change her family forever. She watched the way her father's gaze shifted from her mother to Layla and back again. There was a tension in his eyes that spoke of regrets, choices, and perhaps even lost opportunities. She could feel it, the invisible threads connecting past decisions to the present moment. Every small gesture, every pause in speech carried meaning. Every look exchanged between Rashid and Layla was charged, heavy with unspoken words, memories, and emotions that had been locked away for years. Layla spoke at last, her voice gentle but firm. "I'm here because I need answers," she said, her eyes never leaving Rashid's. "There are things I never understood, promises that were left behind. I came hoping to find closure." Her words were calm, but they carried weight. They were not meant to accuse or disrupt. They were meant to confront a past that had been quietly unresolved. A past that had lingered like an invisible shadow over Rashid's life. Rashid's lips parted, then closed again. He looked down at his hands, then back at Layla, then finally at his wife. He seemed to gather courage to collect himself, to find words that could bridge the years of silence. There was a long pause, the kind that stretches and holds time still. The rain outside continued, tapping softly against the windows, almost as if it were urging him to speak. Ariba felt her pulse quicken. She had never seen her father like this, so human, so vulnerable, so caught between past and present. Was a rare glimpse into his inner world, a side he had never shown, a side that perhaps only she would witness that day. She sensed that this was the beginning of a story that would unfold slowly, revealing truths, regrets, and emotions that had been quietly held for years. It was a story about love, choices, and the consequences of silence. The rain outside had softened to a gentle drizzle, streaking the windows with long, winding rivers of water. Inside, the living room felt charged with a quiet tension. Ariba sat on the edge of the sofa, her hands folded in her lap, watching the two adults in front of her. Her father, Rashid, still stood awkwardly near the entrance, while Layla, the woman who had appeared like a shadow from the past, had finally settled on the sofa. Her posture careful, restrained, yet full of quiet strength. Samina, her mother, remained seated opposite her, her face calm, but her eyes sharp, absorbing every subtle gesture, every pause in speech. The air between the four of them seemed heavy, almost tangible, as though the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for the words that were about to be spoken. Layla looked around the room once, her gaze resting briefly on the framed photographs. On the wall, the carefully arranged furniture, the traces of a life that had continued without her. She did not speak immediately. Instead, she folded her hands neatly on her lap, drawing in a quiet, measured breath. When she finally did speak, her voice was soft but steady. "I didn't come here to cause trouble," she said. "I only came because I needed answers." Her eyes met Rashid's. "There are questions I have carried for years, and I cannot leave without understanding." Rashid's shoulders sagged as if a weight he had been carrying alone for decades had finally been placed on the table. He opened his mouth to speak, then paused, closing it again. His gaze shifted to Samina, then back to Layla, as though seeking permission to reveal parts of himself he had long buried. Ariba watched carefully, sensing that the moment was delicate, that each word carried the potential to change everything. The silence stretched, but it was not empty. It was filled with memory, with regret, with longing, and with emotions that had been carefully hidden behind polite smiles and measured words for far too long. Layla spoke again, her voice tinged with quiet emotion. "Rashid, did you ever regret what happened between us?" The question was gentle, but it struck the room like a ripple through still water. Samina's eyes flicked to her husband, searching for a reaction, while Ariba felt her pulse quicken, sensing the intensity behind the simple question. Rashid's lips parted, then closed, and he swallowed hard. The words he was about to speak were not easy to form. "Or were nights," he said slowly, "when I wondered what life would have been like if things had been different. Life moved forward, and so did I. I made choices, and I chose a path that led me here, to you, Samina, and to this family." Layla's expression softened. There was no anger in her eyes, no accusation, only a quiet, unspoken understanding. "I didn't come to hurt anyone," she said. "I came because I needed to know if what we had, if it was real. Even after all these years, I needed to hear it from you." Rashid's gaze fell to his hands, trembling slightly as he clenched and unclenched his fists. "It was real," he said finally. "It was real, Layla, and it mattered. But life demanded that I move forward. I never forgot, but I had to make choices I thought were right at the time." Samina remained silent for a moment, observing both of them. She felt a twinge of pain, yes, but not jealousy. It was the pain of realizing that her husband had carried a part of his life in silence, a part that had shaped him in ways she had never known. She understood now that this was not a betrayal of their love, but a human story of decisions, of longing, and of circumstances that sometimes force people to set aside their hearts for the sake of stability and sin. "And responsibility?" Layla nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. I never wanted to interfere, she said quietly. I only needed to understand. I came here not to reclaim what was lost, but to find closure. Her words hung in the room, soft but heavy, and for the first time, a sense of calm began to settle over the tense atmosphere. Rashid's shoulders relaxed fractionally, though the weight of years of unspoken feelings still lingered. He spoke next, his voice low, but steady. I regret that I did not tell you, Samina. Should have been honest. I carried silence for too long, thinking it would protect everyone. But it only kept shadows between us. I never stopped loving you, and I never intended to hide anything from you that mattered to our life together. Samina's eyes softened as she listened, her heart recognizing the truth in his words. She realized that love is not a single moment of perfection, but the accumulation of choices, the willingness to grow together, to forgive, and to navigate the complexities of human emotions. Ariba watched the interaction, fascinated and quietly emotional. She had never understood the depth of her father's past, the shadows he had carried, or the sacrifices he had made. She realized that life is rarely simple, and that even people we trust completely have histories filled with hope, longing, and sometimes regret. She felt a sudden surge of empathy for both Rashid and Layla, understanding that their connection had not been about betrayal, but about circumstances, about timing, and about the human tendency to protect those we love, sometimes at the expense of our own emotional truth. Layla's voice broke slightly as she continued. I don't expect anything from this, she said. I'm leaving soon. This city will no longer be my home. I only needed to know that the love we had, that it mattered to you in some way. She paused, looking directly at Rashid. And now I have my answer. Rashid nodded solemnly. Did matter, he replied. It always mattered. But life required that I build a different kind of love. A love that could sustain a family, a home. You were a chapter. But Samina is my present, my choice, my family. Samina's face reflected a mixture of relief and comprehension. She understood that the past does not diminish the present. Rather, it informs it, shapes it, and sometimes teaches us the value of honesty and commitment. She realized that Rashid's love for her had not been diminished by what came before. It had been deepened by the understanding that life is complicated, that people carry histories, and that choosing each other every day is what defines a lasting relationship. The room grew quiet again. Rain continued to streak the windows, soft and rhythmic. Ariba felt her chest tighten as she watched the emotional exchange. This was not a confrontation. There was no anger, no shouting, no dramatic accusations. Instead, there was a careful, almost fragile acknowledgement of the past, a mutual respect for the paths they had all traveled, and a recognition of the boundaries that life had drawn. Layla finally rose from the sofa, smoothing her coat and gathering her belongings. She looked at Rashid one last time, a faint smile touching her lips. Thank you for answering, she said quietly. I can leave with peace now. Rashid's gaze lingered on her, his eyes reflecting a mixture of nostalgia and melancholy. Take care, he said softly. May your life be filled with happiness and fulfillment. Samina stood as well, offering a polite yet warm farewell. Goodbye, Layla, she said. May you find what you are looking for. The door closed gently behind Layla, leaving behind an unusual silence. Rashid sank into the armchair, exhausted not from physical activity, but from the emotional toll of confronting a past that had been hidden for decades. Samina sat beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. Thank you for telling me, she said softly. I understand now. I never thought I could, but I understand. Rashid took a deep breath, the tension in his shoulders slowly releasing. I should have spoken sooner, he admitted. I thought I was protecting you, but I see now that honesty is always better, even if it comes late. Ariba remained on the sofa, absorbing everything she had witnessed. She realized that life is filled with hidden stories, moments of longing, and difficult choices. She understood that love is not always simple or easy, and that people sometimes carry emotions they believe must remain secret for the greater good. But she also understood that confronting those truths, even when painful, can bring clarity, healing, and a stronger connection between those who choose to face them honestly. As the rain continued outside, the house seemed lighter, though the weight of the past had left its mark. Rashid and Samina spoke quietly about memories they had never shared, about dreams that had been deferred, and about the moments that had shaped them individually and as a couple. Ariba felt a sense of closure in witnessing this quiet, emotional reconciliation. It was not dramatic, was not sensational, it was real. And sometimes reality carries more weight and beauty than fiction ever could. By the time evening fell and the rain had stopped, the family felt different. Not because the past had changed, but because they had acknowledged it, understood it, and moved forward together. Rashid's shoulders were straighter, Samina's eyes softer, and Ariba felt a newfound respect and understanding for the complexities of human emotions. The house, once tense and silent, now carried a gentle warmth. For Ariba, the lesson of that afternoon would remain with her forever. Love is layered. Choices are complicated. And honesty, even if delayed, can heal wounds and restore balance. The quiet resolution of that rainy day had shown her that the heart can hold both past longing and present commitment. That people are capable of growth, and that understanding often comes when we least expect it. And though Layla had left her, presence lingered as a reminder that life is full of unfinished stories. And sometimes confronting them is necessary not to relive the past, but to embrace the future with clarity and courage. The morning after Layla's visit arrived quietly, with sunlight filtering through the thin veil of clouds left over from last night's rain. The house, though calm on the surface, carried the echoes of the emotional storm from the day before. Ariba woke early, her mind still replaying the tense conversation, the long pauses, and the unspoken words between her father and Layla. She moved to the living room and saw her mother, Sumina, already seated at the table with a cup of tea, staring at the window. There was a softness in her expression, a gentleness that hadn't been there the day before. Samina's fingers traced the rim of her cup absent-mindedly, as though savoring the quiet, the stillness, and the new understanding that had settled over the household. Rashid entered the room soon after, his coat already hung neatly, and the faint smell of last night's rain still clinging to him. His face looked tired but unburdened, as if the act of confronting the past had released a weight he had carried for decades. Ariba noticed immediately how his posture was different, more relaxed, more open, less tense than she had ever seen him. He greeted his wife and daughter with a warm smile, a real one, unguarded and sincere. For the first time in years, the house felt like a place where secrets no longer lived in the shadows. Where honesty had cleared the air and allowed new light to enter, Samina broke the quiet first. "Last night was unexpected," she said, her voice soft but steady. She turned to her husband. "I won't lie. Part of me was hurt, not by Layla, but by the silence. I wish you had told me before. I would have understood." Rashid sat down beside her, reaching for her hand. "I know," he admitted. "I thought I was protecting you, protecting us. I wanted to shield you from a past that I believed didn't matter anymore. I was wrong. Keeping it from you only created a distance that should never have existed." Ariba listened quietly, feeling a new respect for both of her parents. She realized that love was not about perfection, but about honesty, forgiveness, and the courage to face uncomfortable truths. This was not a story of betrayal, but of human complexity, of emotions that linger, of choices made under pressure, and of the realization that true love often requires understanding the past as well as embracing the present. Rashid continued, speaking with a calm conviction. "What happened with Layla? It was a chapter of my life, one filled with passion and hope, yes, but it ended. Life moved me here, to you, Samina, and to this family. Choosing you every day has been my greatest decision. But I should have shared that part of me so that the distance created by silence would never have grown. Samina squeezed his hand. Gently, it's not too late, she said. You've shared it now, and that is enough. The past doesn't change the present, but understanding it strengthens what we have today. Reba's heart warmed as she observed her parents. She had always known that they loved each other deeply, but seeing them navigate this delicate reconciliation gave her a new appreciation for the depth of their bond. She realized that love was not only the grand gestures, the anniversaries, and the celebrations, was also the quiet moments of honesty, the willingness to be vulnerable, the courage to face emotions long hidden. The family spent the morning in a kind of reflective calm. Rashid and Samina shared stories of their youth, of dreams and fears they had never spoken aloud, of ambitions that had been deferred and hopes that had been fulfilled. Ariba listened intently, absorbing each word, each laugh, and each moment of quiet vulnerability. It was a morning of connection, one that reminded them all of the importance of communication and the strength that comes from facing truth with love. Later, Rashid rose and retrieved a small bouquet of flowers from the kitchen counter. The kind Samina loved most, white lilies, simple and elegant. He handed them to her with a soft smile. For you, he said, not because of guilt, but because of love. It's because honesty deserves recognition. Samina accepted them with a gentle laugh, the tension of the previous day melting into something warm, tender, and profoundly human. She hugged him briefly, a gesture that spoke volumes about forgiveness, understanding, and renewed connection. Ariba felt a smile tug at her lips. She had watched many dramas unfold on television, read countless stories of betrayal and heartbreak, but what she was witnessing now was different. It was real, it was quiet, subtle, yet powerful. It was a lesson in the nuances of love, in the complexity of human emotions, and in the beauty of reconciliation. She realized that people carry histories, but the present is defined by choices, made in honesty, compassion, and respect. The day unfolded with small, meaningful gestures. Rashid and Samina went for a walk in the garden, rain-soaked leaves glistening under the clearing sky. They talked, laughed, and occasionally fell silent, simply enjoying each other's company. Their hands brushed together, then intertwined, a silent reaffirmation of the bond that had endured years of unspoken truths and quiet endurance. Ariba watched from the window, feeling a deep sense of peace. She understood that love is resilient, that it can survive hidden emotions and past regrets, and that it grows stronger when nurtured with honesty and patience. That evening, Ariba sat with her parents at the dining table. The air filled with soft conversation, the warmth of shared memories, and the comfort of familial connection. Rashid spoke gently about his past, about the choices he had made, and about the love that had led him to Samina. He expressed gratitude for her understanding, for her patience, and for the life they had built together. Samina listened with quiet grace, her eyes reflecting both pride and love. Acknowledging the honesty that had transformed their relationship, Ariba realized that the house itself had changed. The walls seemed brighter, the air lighter, and the quiet spaces that had once felt heavy now carried a sense of openness and warmth. The family had faced a moment of truth, and in doing so had emerged stronger, closer, and more understanding of each other's hearts. Later that night, after the lights were dimmed and the rain had stopped completely, Ariba lay in her bed, thinking about the events of the past 2 days. She reflected on the power of confronting the past, the importance of honesty, and the resilience of love. She understood that life is rarely straightforward, that people carry emotions and histories that shape their actions, and that the courage to speak the truth can heal wounds and deepen connections. She thought of Layla, the woman who had appeared unexpectedly and yet left without causing destruction. Layla's presence had been like a mirror, reflecting choices, emotions, and consequences. Back onto Rashid and Samina, She realized that Layla had not come to take anything, but to seek closer a gentle, quiet resolution that allowed everyone involved to move forward without bitterness or regret. Ariba felt a deep sense of gratitude for witnessing this. Reconciliation. She understood that love is not about perfection, but about growth, understanding, and the willingness to confront difficult truths. She recognized that her parents' relationship had been tested not by betrayal, but by unspoken emotions and the courage required to face them. And she felt reassured that true love, when nurtured with honesty and respect, could withstand even the most delicate and challenging moments. The following days were filled with subtle changes that reflected the emotional growth of the family. Rashid and Samina spent more time together, sharing small joys, revisiting memories, and speaking openly about their hopes and fears. Laughter returned to the house, genuine and effortless, replacing the quiet tension that had lingered for years. Ariba noticed how her parents looked at each other differently, softly, tenderly, with an understanding that only comes from confronting truth and choosing love again. Rashid made small gestures to demonstrate his commitment, not out of guilt, but out of intention. He left notes for Samina, cooked her favorite meals on occasion, and took time to engage in conversations that deepened their emotional bond. Samina, in turn, responded with warmth and patience, nurturing the renewed connection with her own gestures of care and understanding. Ariba watched quietly, feeling inspired by the resilience of her parents' love and the strength of their relationship. One evening, as the sun set in a soft orange glow, Rashid and Samina walked hand in hand through the garden, the scent of wet earth and flowers filling the air. They spoke about their dreams, their regrets, and the lessons they had learned from the unexpected visitor who had stirred long-buried emotions. Ariba followed at a distance, giving them privacy while reflecting on the significance of the moment. She understood that life is full of challenges, but the choices people make, the courage to face truth, and the willingness to forgive and understand, define the depth of love. Ariba felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that her family had grown stronger through honesty and emotional courage. She realized that the rainy day, the knock at the door, and the visitor from the past had not been a threat, but a gift, chance for reflection, reconciliation, and renewed commitment. She understood that love is not only about passion, but also about patience, understanding, and the quiet strength to navigate complex emotions with care and empathy.